So we saw that Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis, has a recurring theme of sibling rivalry, brothers who disagree with each other about the priorities in life, about values that they fight for, about the way life should be lived, about all kinds of things. Now, we can ask a very simple question. Is it so bad that brothers disagree? I mean, you have your opinion, I have my opinion. Therefore, Shalom al Yisrael, let everybody be happy. You do what you do and I do what I do, and as long as we are not in each other's way, then it's fine. Because if you are realistic, it's mathematically impossible that two human beings should agree on everything, because if that is so, they are a carbon copy of each other. They are just the same person. The only person with whom you, with a bit of luck in this world, could agree is you yourself. And many of us don't even manage that. So, really, the world should learn to live with conflict, or at least with a lack of complete balance and harmony. Again, I'd like to illustrate this with a piece of wisdom that we have from our sages, from Chazal. When man was created, God said, Nase Odom b'tzalmeinu, let us create man. And the sages explain that he took advice from his heavenly court, from the Malachim, from these angelic beings that form his court. And they were in 4 categories. We mentioned earlier the number 4, that things come in 4 when you have contrast. Here are 4 categories. One of these groups of Malachim was called Emes, truth. The other one was called Tzedek, righteousness. The third one was called Sholem, peace or harmony. And the last one was called Chesed, loving kindness. And Emes argued against the creation of man. Emes said, Lau Yibore, he should not be created, ki kula shekorim. He is made out of lies. He is completely a deceitful being. Kula shekorim, he is full of lies. Tzedek said, Yibore, he should be created, hu yirdav tzedek, he will pursue righteousness, justice. Sholem said he should not be created because hu kulau ketoto, he's full with strife, he's always fighting. And Chesed said, let him be created, hu yase Chesed, he will do loving kindness. Ma asu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? So he took truth and he threw it to the world. Shenema, as it says in the pasuk, in a verse in Psalms, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Emes me eretz titzmach. Interesting, you look at the letters of Emes me eretz titzmach, you take the first letters, it spells Emes. Emes me eretz titzmach. The middle letters form me eretz. Emes, the middle letter is a mem. Me eretz is the resh. Titzmach is the tzadeh. Titzmach. Emes me eretz titzmach. The last letters form the word titzmach. Emes ends with the tov. Me eretz starts with the tzadeh, and titzmach ends in a mem and a ches. So the words read up and down and sideways, all the same thing. 100. That's one complete harmonious whole. Emes me eretz titzmach. Interestingly enough, it seems to mean that although the absolute truth is up there in the world of the Malachim, man has to discover it for himself. It has to grow from down below. It's also interesting to note that the pleading of the 4 parties, the nays who said man should not be created, all said what man is. Hukulo shekorim, he's full of lies. Hukulo ketot, he's full of strife. Whereas the pros said what he can do. Hu yirdav tzedek, he will pursue justice. Who ya'aseh chesed, he will do kindness. So again, man's state, or the condition humaine, the human condition, is never static. It is what man is what he can become. That is his true identity. His true identity is not the status quo, it is what he can become. I can't resist the temptation of going a little bit into this MS business, because we find in a wonderful, wonderful sefer called Shnei Luchos HaBris, the two tablets of the law, which was written by the Shloh HaKodesh, the Holy Shloh. His name was Horowitz. He says that there are 7 places in the story of Bereshis where the end of the words, of 3 consecutive words, spell out MS. Bereshis, Boro Elokim Es. The last letter spell out MS. And it goes on. You can find them. I checked it because I'm suspicious so-and-so. Whenever I read something, I want to see it with my own eyes. And if I would not have done that, I would not have discovered something unbelievably important. Because I'll count out for you where you can find the Sof Tevos MS, Aleph Mem Tov. Bora Elokim Es HaShamayim V'Zorot. That's one. Vayar Elokim Es Ha'or Kitov. That's the second. God so lighted it was good. Vayivra Elokim Es Hataninim Hagadolim, and God created the big sea monsters. That's number 3. Number 4 is Vayivra Elokim Es Ha'odom. God created man. The 5th is Vayar Elokim Es Kol Asher Osoi. God saw all that he has made. The 6th is Asher Bora Elokim La'asos, which God made in order to do. In order for us to do, by the way. Right? That's 6. The 7th is not there. And then I remembered this medrash that says, Emetz me'eretz titzmach. Emetz will grow from the ground. And I decided to read on. And you find a 7th, but you have to read on a little bit. It is when God created the animals and brought them to Adam to see what names he would give them. And there it says, Vayikra ha'odam shemos, and man called names. So you see that the first 6 are all God's work. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created all things, and he saw that it was good. The 7th, the seal of truth, comes from us. It's given to us. We need to find it. Of course, it's divine truth, but we have to find it. So now it comes to conflict between human beings. Live and let live is a wonderful, wonderful way of approaching things. When brothers can grant each other the light of day and not be jealous of what he has, but rather work on what they themselves can become, there is harmony. But harmony is not to be had by declaring, you have your truth and I have my truth. The relativation of truth is the death knell of the development of mankind. If we give up on the notion of truth, we may disagree on what that truth is. We may fight. We may... Look, when we're learning, it's called Milchamto Shel Torah. It's the battle of Torah. It's the war that you have with your chavrusa to find out what is the right way of understanding. That's a correct thing. We have the saying of the sages, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Sholom Ba'olam, that the sages or the scholars bring peace to the world. How do they bring peace to the world? Last time I checked, I didn't see so much peace among Talmidei Chachamim. Ideally, it's like this. All the strife and all the attempts to confront each other and to battle things out should be in order to discover the truth together. That's called Milchamta Shel Torah. It's a war. It's a fight. But you fight it with love for each other and with love for the truth. The story of Bereshis is a story of people trying to find their way through the world, brothers in conflict, and that brings me to what I want to speak about today in Parshas Vayechi. Because we have an episode. In the beginning of the Parsha, it says, Vayi acharei hadavorim ha'ele vayomer liYosef hinei ovicho chole. It was told to Joseph that his father was ill. It's a bit strange because it doesn't say who told him. It says simply Vayomer, and he told. Vayomer liYosef hinei ovicho chole. There are two opinions among the commentators, among the Meforshim. One, it doesn't need telling. There was just a guy who told them. And Vayomer ha'omer, the one who happened to be telling it was the one who told it, the one who said it. It's not completely unusual in the Hebrew language, but nevertheless you have to ask the question, why use this turn of phrase here and not simply say, it was told to Joseph? Why does it say in the active form, and he said to Joseph? It provokes the question, who is that he? And that's the other opinion that we find among the commentators, that this is Ephraim. And one actually remarks that Vayomer and Ephraim have exactly the same letters, with the exception of the Vav that becomes a Pei. The Vav is the sixth letter from the beginning of the Aleph base, and the Pei is the sixth letter from the end of the Aleph base. It's an interchange of the Pei and the Vav. You get Vayomer from Ephraim. I want to make a side remark about this Vav and Pei interchange. It's not so crazy as it sounds, because the Hebrew letters are split into various categories of letters, the sibilants and the gutturals, etc. And the letters base, Vav, Mem, and Pei are called the ostios Bumov, base, Vav, Mem, Pei, and they are all lip letters. M, P, W, F, they're made with the lips. There's a fantastic Kabbalistic sefer called Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of the earliest Kabbalistic texts, that speaks at length about the various places in the mouth where letters come from and where sounds come from, and what the spiritual meaning of that is. But again, that's not our subject, so I won't go into that. But Vayomer liYosef hinei ovicho chole. And then he goes and he visits his father. And there's a back and forth. There's the elevation of Efraim and Menashe to Shvatim in their own right. They get the status of a tribe, whereas this really is only their uncles that are tribes and their father. But no. So implicitly, Yosef is promoted from being a son to a father. And the son-father relationship of Yosef and Yaakov is a very complicated matter. You have to ask yourself, why Yosef never informed Yaakov that he was still alive? He actually caused his father a lot of suffering over the years that he was not there, and his father was never certain what happened to my son. You find other expressions of paternity or fatherhood in relation to Yosef. When Yosef is called Av leParo, he is called the father of Pharaoh. There's a kind of an interchange between the Yaakov-Yosef relationship with his father's son and the Yosef-Paro relationship. You have to also ask the question, why did Yaakov send, knowing full well that the brothers had animosity towards his son Yosef, also knowing full well that he had provoked this animosity by treating Yosef in a different way from his brothers, why did he send them to Shechem to check up on the brothers and send them into the mouth of the lion? So, not our subject, but it's a very interesting area to explore. Joseph as father and as son. Here, as a son, he is a Shevet. As a father of Efraim and Menashe, he is the father of Shvatim, and therefore Joseph is the link between the Ovos and the Bonim. He is the link between Sefer Bereshis, which is about the Ovas, and Sefer Shemos, which starts with Ele Shemos Bnei Yisrael, the story of the sons. The enumeration of who left Canaan to live in Egypt is in this week's Seder at the end of Bereshis, and it's in next week's Seder in the beginning of Shemos. The same enumeration of names, it's just a repetition. But Joseph is the link between the two. Joseph is also the link in the sense that Yaakov insists that he should be buried in Eretz Yisrael, that he belongs in the Holy Land, whereas Joseph stays behind in Mitzrayim. The last words of Sefer Bereshis is that Joseph is in a sarcophagus in Mitzrayim. And when the Bnei Yisrael leave Mitzrayim at the time of the Exodus, the story is that they had to take the Atzmos Yosef, the bones of Yosef, with them, the mortal remains of Yosef, who would be buried now in Shechem, who would be buried in Eretz Yisrael many years, centuries after he died. And when they were looking for the Atzmos Yosef, actually the bones of Yosef, the mortal remains of Yosef, actually Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses, went into the necropolis of Egypt, where they buried all the high dignitaries, and he said, Yosef, Yosef, Hashchina uvnei Yisrael yotzi mimitzrayim. Are you coming with? He said, Yosef, Yosef, the divine presence and the Jews are leaving Egypt. Are you coming with us? And then the bones shook, and it is Aleshar, get up, ox. Ox is the symbol for Joseph. In the broche is Aleshar, is the broche for Joseph. What's underlying it is the following. As long as the Ovas are in the world, as long as the fathers of the world, the Ovas HaOlam they're called, the Avram, Yitzchak and Yaakov are not just our ancestors, they are the fathers of the world. They are the ones that chart the way how mankind can grow up, as parents should do with their children to guide them into growing up. And therefore they are called Merkovo Lashchina. They are called the chariot of the divine presence. Just like a chariot is the means by which the king moves through his kingdom, likewise, the divine presence, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the world, as long as the Ovas were alive, the Ovas were a Merkava L'Shchina. They were the carrier for the divine presence. When Yaakov died and was brought to Eretz Yisrael for burial, where is the Merkava L'Shchina? After all, the Shchina, the divine presence, said to Yaakov, I will come with you to Mitzrayim. In Vayigash, we have we find the words of Hashem to Yaakov. And God said to Yisrael, which is Yaakov, in a vision in the night, Vayama Yaakov, Yaakov. He said, Yaakov, Yaakov, Vayama Hineni. And he said, here I am. Vayama Onochi Hokel, Elokei Ovicho. I am the God of your father. Al Tiro Miredo Mitzrayim. Do not fear to go to Mitzrayim. Ki legai godal asim choshom, because there I will make you into a great nation. And now listen to the next words. Onochi ered imoch. I will go with you. Mitzrayim, to Mitzrayim. The onochi, and I. A'alchom gam olao. I will bring you up. Gam olao. This is a typical Hebrew construct where the verbal form is followed by infinitive, the absolute infinitive, to give it extra emphasis. But there's something very, very strange here. A'alcho is a hifil. It means I will cause you to go up. Olau is a kal. It's not the infinitive of the hifil. It is I myself will go up. So the Exodus is not just the Exodus of the Jews from Mitzrayim. It's the coming home of the Shechina that was in Golus. This concept of Shechina in the Golus is a very, very well-known concept. Today as well, in our present Golus, the Shechina is in Golus as well. God's presence is in exile, is not in its right place. This is the reason why Joseph had to stay in Mitzrayim. Joseph had to stay in Mitzrayim because he was the last of the Ovas by making Efraim and Menashe Shavotim, elevating them to the level of the brothers of Joseph, Joseph implicitly was elevated to the status of Yaakov. He was the last of the Ovas. The last of the Ovas is not Yaakov, it's Joseph. Now, we spoke about brothers having a tense and conflicting relationship with each other. In the story of Yaakov and Joseph, we also find two brothers. Vaya Yisrael es bnei Yosef vayoma mi ele. He saw the sons of Joseph and he asked, who are they? What do you mean? We earlier learned that Ephraim was the one who was the messenger between Joseph and Yaakov. The background of that is explained by some Meforshim that Joseph kept himself at the distance of his father. He didn't want to have too much contact with his father. He was afraid that his father would ask, and now my son, how did you end up here in Mitzrayim? I never understood the complete story here. And he wanted to avoid that. So he sent Ephraim as a go-between. Ephraim was also somebody who learned with his grandfather day and night. Yaakov asked Mi'ele. Mi'ele are the letters of Elohim. How does this relate to the story of God? That's what he wants to know. How are we going to get through with these two brothers? Is there a conflict between brothers looming here, Efraim and Menashe? I just elevated Efraim and Menashe to Shvatim. Are they going to compete in this new space that they find? Are there going to be limits to their ambition? And is their ambition going to be weaponized against one another? Mi Ele. Ele is also a very charged word. When the Jews made the golden calf, the Egel Azov, they said, Ele Elohecha Yisrael, these are your gods. Ele is a word of plurality. Zeh is something that we apply to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeh Keli Vanvehu, this is my God, and I will beautify him, or I will make beautiful things for him. That's just by the by. When you hear the word Ele, listen carefully and see what the resonance is. But Joseph immediately contrasted by Vayama Yosef El Oviv, Bonai Heim, they are my sons, Asher Nosan Li Elokim Bozeh, with this. Zeh, Gematria 12, by the way, is a hint at the 12 sons of Yaakov that they are one unit. They are called Bnei Yisrael. They will not be separated from each other. Whatever happens, whatever strife there will be in the future, the family rift between the brothers and Joseph has just been healed after a fashion. Don't kid yourself, we still suffer from the results of Mechias Yosef. We have 10 Shvatim that have disappeared from our midst, and we haven't found them back yet. They are the children of Yosef. And when the Novi speaks about Rochel, when the prophet speaks about Rachel, who is Mevaka al Bonehu, who cries over her children, why? Ki einenu. It means because he isn't there. It doesn't say ki einom, because they have gone, they have disappeared. No, it's just a singular. Ki einenu. The einenu is an echo of Joseph. The speech last week that Yehuda had, he says, echot einenu, and the one is not. It's the same language. So the consequences of Mechias Yosef, we are still suffering today. There are other things. The Asora Ruge Malchus, the 10 martyrs who were murdered by the Roman in the Hadrianic persecutions. We say this lament over their death on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, the Asura Ruge Malchus. I think only in Ashkenaz we say it on Yom Kippur. But we haven't forgotten it. And let's not forget that the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, was destroyed because of sinas chinam, because of baseness, hatred between brothers, between ourselves. So we haven't overcome it. But there is a hope, because Asher Nosan Li Elokim Bozeh. Joseph said, these children are given bozeh with zeh, not with ele. Then we have a very interesting pasuk. I hope that you have still a little bit of time to listen to this. Ve'ene Yisrael kovdu mezoken. The eyes of Yisrael, that's Yaakov, of Israel, were heavy of old age. Lo yuchol liraos, he could not see. Vayagesh ausom elov, and he brought them near to him. Vayishak lohem, vayichabek lohem. Whom does this make you think of when you hear that the eyes of Israel were heavy from old age and he couldn't see very well? Whom else have we heard that was in his old age and was not able to see very well and needed someone to come close to him so that he could feel him? It is of course Yitzchak. Can you imagine what goes through Yaakov Avinu's mind as this fateful thing repeats itself in front of him? He cannot see and he needs to find out what is with his grandsons. Vayame Yisrael el Yosef, and Yisrael, Yaakov said to Yosef, Re'au fonecho lo filalti, v'nei her'e ausi Elokim gam es zarecho. Re'au fonecho lo filalti. I had not judged it possible to see your face. It's a very strange form. Re'au fonecho. It doesn't say liraos fonecho, to see your face. It says re'au fonecho. It's again a smichus. The seeing of your face. The discerning of your face. Lau filalti. I had not judged possible. Pilalti means to judge. The plilim are judges. But I think what it tells you is you can only see what you judge possible to see. If your mindset says I cannot see it, you won't see it, even if it stares you in the face. Think of the brothers and Joseph. When Joseph, who was a spitting image of his father, although he was dressed in Egyptian garb, they could easily have seen as Joseph if they could have allowed themselves even to think that such a thing is possible. Remember what Yaakov's reaction was when he heard that Joseph was still alive. The brother said, Oud Joseph Chai v'chihu Moshe b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. Joseph is still alive and he is ruling in the whole land of Egypt. And Yaakov didn't believe them. V'lo hamin lohem Yaakov, it says. So Yaakov did not believe him. What do you mean? You really think that your sons, who know that you have been mourning your long-lost beloved son Joseph for so many years, they would play such a cruel joke with their father to come with the message, Joseph's still alive, and it is not true? This is not even conceivable. It cannot mean that. However, the V'lau hamin lohem was v'chihu Moshe b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. You really think that my son, who is now the prime minister of Egypt, is still the son that I call my son Joseph? He must have changed beyond recognition. That I don't believe. I may as well not have him back, if that's the way of getting him back. Then he saw the agolos. Then he saw the wagons. And however you learn that it was a hint, they're learning together, whatever the thing may be, he changed his mind and he says, now I believe it. And then he says, Abuso hapam, let me die today because my son Joseph is still alive. My Rosh Hashiva, Reb Nosson Kamenetsky, quoted it in name of his father, Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky, the Emes Yaakov, that the message of the Algolas were, he did not send to his father a merkovo, a state carriage. He sent him ox-drawn wagons, a lowly means of transport. It fits a lot of people because these flatbed carriages are very good for transporting a lot of stuff and a lot of people, but they're not a royal way of moving. It's not a Bentley, it's not a Lamborghini. When he saw that and he realized that Joseph had not allowed his high status to go to his head, but he was still Joseph, and he's still, of course, the symbol of Joseph is the shor, is the ox, and he said ox-drawn carriages. It was a hint. There's also another hint there the parsha of Egla Aruf, of the calf that has its neck broken as a kind of ceremony when a dead body is found in the field and nobody knows who has killed it, and then the elders of the nearest town come and they wash their hands, and they said, our hands have not shed this blood. Maybe Joseph was actually giving a little bit of a hint to his father as well. There was somebody who you thought was found dead in the field, torn by a wild animal, and there are elders who have declared themselves innocent. Maybe that was reason enough for Yaakov not to press the issue too much in the 17 years that he was in Mitzrayim. Although you read the brachot, you read the blessings that he gave to his sons, there were plenty of hints to the role of Shimon and Levi in it, and Yehuda. Miterev beni oliso is a phrase, these 3 words in blessing of Yehuda. Miterev beni oliso. From the prey, my son, you have risen up. But you can also read it from the prey of my son, you have risen up. Namely, miterev, the echo is ki toraf Yosef. Surely Joseph is torn by an animal. So miterev beni, from the torn state of my son, Oliso, you have emerged going up. You have redeemed yourself through what Judah did in last week's episode. Okay, I want to come to the actual. Vayotze Yosef also me'im Birkov, after Yaakov has embraced the sons and has cuddled them, Joseph takes them from between the knees of Yaakov. Vayishtachu le'apov, and he bowed down to the ground, also all the way. And then Joseph took the 2 of them. As Ephraim biminau, Ephraim to his right, Mismal Yisrael to the left side of his father Yaakov. There's Menashe bismalo, and Menashe on his left. Mimin Yisrael vayagesh elov, and he brought him near. Menashe is here, Ephraim is there. And if they go forward, it will turn out that Menashe will be on the right-hand side of Yaakov and Ephraim will be on the left-hand side of Yaakov. This is how Joseph planned it. Although it means that now he has to take Menashe to his left and Ephraim to his right, when they are pushed forward and they come to Yaakov, who is facing the different direction, you have an interchange of left and right, obviously. Vayishlach Yisrael es yeminau, and Yaakov stretched out his right hand, Vayoshes al rosh Ephraim, and he put it on the head of Ephraim. So he takes his right hand and he puts it on Ephraim's head, who's standing on his left. V'hu hatzoir, but he was the younger one. Ve'es smolo, his left hand, al rosh Menashe, sikel es Yodov, because Menashe was the firstborn. Sikel es Yodov, the word occurs only here. It doesn't occur anywhere else in Tanakh. It is, of course, related to lehaskil. Sikel es Yodov. He made his hands clever. There's a problem in this pasuk. It says, Ki Menashe habachar. Let's translate, he crossed his hands. For Menashe was the Bechar, he was the first thing. It should say, despite the fact that Menashe was the firstborn, he puts his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Menashe. It doesn't fit to say Sikel as Yodov, Ki Menashe habachar. He switched, he crossed his arms because Menashe. It should have said despite. Look what happens. He puts his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Menashe. Which hand is on top? The left hand is on top. He could have put the left hand on Menashe and the right hand on Ephraim, and then the Ephraim hand would be on top. Sikel as Yodov. He did it in a clever way. Ki Menashe habachar, because after all, even though you put Ephraim before Menashe, Menashe is still the Bechar. You don't take it away from him. He is still the Bechar. So it means Ki Menashe habachar, because Menashe was the Bechar. Then he blesses them, right? And then you get Vayar Yosef ki Yoshis Aviv as Yemino al Rosh Ephraim. He saw that the right hand had been on Ephraim's head and it was bad in his eyes. Vayishmach Yad Aviv, and he grabs the hand of his father, Lahosel also may al Rosh Ephraim, to take it from the head of Ephraim, al Rosh Menashe, to change it around. Maybe even he thought, I approach, of course I have my Bechal Menashe on my right hand and my second son on my left hand, so when you come to me, I have to cross my hands to find the right one. This is what Joseph thinks. Vayama Joseph el Oviv, and Joseph said to his father, Lau geen Ovi, not in this, not lau geen, it doesn't just mean not thus, because that you should say in Hebrew, lau kach. Lau geen means this will not last. Kein nochan means it is established, it will last. Lau geen Ovi. Ki zeh bechal, because this is the bechal. Sim yemincho al rosho, put your right hand on his head. Vayema ein Oviv, and his father refused. Vayama yodati v'ni yodati, I know my son, I know. Gam hu yiyel gam hu yigdal ulam ochiv hakotan yigdal mimenu. Also he will be a great tribe, and he will also grow numerous, but his younger brother will outdo him, will be bigger than him. V'zar yiyeh melo hagayim, and his seed will be Melo HaGoyim, the fullness of nations. I'm not going to try even to translate that. What I want to draw your attention to is these words, Yodati v'ni Yodati. You think that I, Yaakov, would not know what it means, sibling rivalry? You know how difficult this is for me to put Ephraim before Menashe. I have to be so careful that history doesn't repeat itself. Zikel es Yodov. And this is the one sibling rivalry that doesn't happen. Sefer Bereshis ends on this positive note. Two things. The sibling rivalry seemed to have been put to rest in the family of the Ovas. How it is with the Bonim, it's a different matter. We have a long way to go still. And the second thing is, the period of the Ovas is over. They have laid the foundations. Yaakov has been brought to Eretz Yisrael to be buried. Joseph is still in Mitzrayim, waiting our redemption, which he promised will happen. And then he will also come with the Shekhinah to leave Mitzrayim and to go to the place of which God said to Avram Avinu, Lech lecho me'atzecho el ha'oretz asher ar eko, which you can read, ar eko can mean where I will show you. I will bring you to the land where I can show you what potential humanity has and what it means to become a man. And there I'll stop.